the name of the series I have put down as Journey into Unknowable. Knowing the unknowable, I would rather say that. It's based on a series by Rajneesh on Agyat Ki Or. So he's telling us to go into Agyat. But it's kind of a misnomer because Agyat, literal translation would be unknown.
Unknown.
But unknown also means that it can be known.
Right.
With the proper tools and proper education and proper grasping of the information, you can know it. It's just you're not there yet. But when we're talking about Paramatma, when we're talking about the spiritual self-realization and all that, it's not a question of knowing or not knowing. Knowing can be converted into, unknowing can be converted into knowing, but when there is something that is unknowable, then it's a different league altogether. So that's really the journey that we want to take, to know the unknowable. And when you really reach to the state of unknowable, the knowledge becomes secondary, because the knowledge, the knower, and the knowing, everything merges into one spot. That's the state of samadhi. So that's where we want to go. So Agyat Ki Or should be actually Agye Ki Or. Agye is not knowable. To know something, we use our tools. Our tools are 5 senses: touch, smell, hearing. All those senses we use to assess a situation that is made of objects, people, or combination of all these things. So our limitation is the limitation of our senses. So we can know only what our senses can let us know. Anything that is beyond the senses, we cannot know. So the world actually operates only based on only 2 things. Either something that is known to you or something that is unknown to you. But with proper teacher, proper training, you can know it. So the exchange of information basically makes you know things, but that's about it. Meanwhile, there is huge life that is hidden behind all these things, that is operating all these things, operating you and me, including the knowledge that we are all sharing. Is like on the surface there are a lot of ocean waves going on, one ocean wave talking to another ocean wave, and all this bickering and this and that, not knowing there is a huge ocean underneath. So at some point we have to take that journey into the state of unknowable. So knowing the unknowable is going to be the topic of this series. I'm going to start with a discussion on one story about a Sunni fakir that happened around year 93, 95. So right after Jesus Christ was born. So about 2,500 years back. Her name was Rabia. And one day, and she was a poor family. She was from a poor family. And she was one of the 4 daughters of a poor family. And the literal meaning of Rabia is 4. So she was the 4th daughter of a very poor family. And one day from her hut came the shouting. She was shouting in the morning, "There is a fire, there is a fire, there is a fire." And the whole neighborhood woke up and everybody started rushing to help her out, thinking that there's going to be a fire there. So they brought buckets and buckets full of water, and as they arrived near her hut, they realized that they did not see any fire. So they started asking Rabia, "Where is the fire? You've been shouting." He says, No, the fire is going on within me. There is nothing you can do about it. Thanks for your concern, but please take your buckets of water back home. But my fire only I can quench. The fire is happening within me. I have a lot of upsetting feelings inside, and that's what I call fire, and I have to take care of fire. But by the way, when you go home, you search your souls and find out whether you are also suffering with that fire or not. The fire, everyone has it within their own souls. Only a soul searching will tell us that we have a lot of conflicts going on, we have a lot of emotions going on, we have a lot of vruttis and vasanas, we're fighting all the time, and we are really continuously in a struggle between the soul and the matter and the possession, acquisition, holding, preserving, all these things is going on. She equated that with the fire, and the only thing to do to appease that fire is to go within and have face-to-face conversation with God. She was a very spiritual person. I actually looked into Wikipedia because Rajneesh talks about Rabia a lot. So it was very interesting. She has a very interesting character. So, like I said, she lived in Iraq, actually modern day Iraq, and she was born between 95 to 99, and she was the first one in the Sufi tradition to bring the divinity and the love for God, like a bhakti, more or less, like a devotion type of, like an angle to the whole existence about the God. Before that, it did not exist. So she was like, you can equate to Mirabai. She made popular the divinity and the worshipping of the God. And she was the first one to introduce the idea that God should be loved for the God's sake, not for your personal interests or personal motives. He says God is God, and there has to be no reason for you to worship God other than God himself. So she was the first one to, because there were other Sufi traditions had been going on before that, and there were again similar like that's going on in the Christianity, that if you do this, God will punish you. There is a Satan. The Satan will be, devil will be let loose on you, and all those things. But if you do this, you will get paradise, and all those, the people were attracted into given the attractions to get into the religion so that you can start worshipping God. So she says that God cannot be loved, for any sense of or for any desire to achieve something. So her prayer always used to be that, oh God, if I worship you for the fear of hell, burn me in hell. That means if I'm worried about hell and that's why I'm praying to you, make sure that I go to hell and I suffer. Or if I worship you with the hope of paradise, make sure I do not go to the paradise. I do not want that kind of paradise. But if I worship you for your own sake, please give me your everlasting beauty. So this was 2,500 years back, pretty much revolutionary in those days even. So it really makes sense, and that's what Rajneesh has been stressing about, that your journey into the unknowable should be not tainted with any motives, any desires, other than just the desire to merge yourself with Paramatma. So knowing the unknowable is a beautiful journey that we're going to start. And at one time, because she was born very poor, she went through a lot of suffering and poverty, and her father was very poor, but very self-respected man, and had a lot of respect in the community, and he would not ask for anything from anyone. But the poverty also has its own virtues also, and that's how she was also. She would not beg anything, she would not ask for anything, but going through the hardships, she was taken as a slave actually by one of the richer people, and slave traditions had been going on even in those days for thousands of years. The modern equivalent is knockers, our servants. They're pretty much slaves, right? For we give them something and they do it for us and things like that. So in those days, she was captured as a slave, and the the saying goes that during those sufferings also, because she had to do a lot of hard work and things like that, but she would not give up her prayers that she would do every single day. So one day, one day her owner heard about her prayers, and she was praying that, God, I know you want me to pray you all the time, and I do want to pray you all the time, but all these duties of being a slave is interfering me. I wish I did not have that, but whatever it is, I'm going to carry out your wish is my command, and I'm going to keep doing. Somehow her boss, the master, heard this, and he really overcome with guilt and the feeling that maybe I'm hurting Paramatma himself, so he let her go, and he freed her, and that's how she got her freedom, just out of her divinity. And then after that she lived for many years, till 85, 90 almost. She never married, and so her life was a very good example of spiritual. So that's why Rajneesh quotes her so many times. So one time, and again in those days also there were pandits, and so there were sheikhs. Sheikhs were again the appointed religious leaders, so-called, and they had claimed authority as far as training people to reach to the heaven and things like that. But here Rabia had reached to the self-realization on her own. So he asked her, how did you do it? So the answer she gave was very beautiful. She says, you know the how, you know the methods, but I know the how less. No methods, and just be yourself. Jala se machli, jaise machli nikalti hai. So give up all the ideas, give up all the thoughts, give up all the notions, give up all the wrong thinkings and all these things. Sometimes they themselves are the hindrance in the path to the spirituality. So she said beautifully that you know the how, but I know the how less. Without knowing anything, you can still reach to the state of realization. So whether we realize or not, we all are suffering with that fire within us. Whether we want to pay attention to it or not, whether we want to neglect it and put it away, but there is a suffering inside. We always are suffering, and continuously we become so accustomed to it that we don't even think twice. And that fire is continuously burning. And with burning fire, if you operate outside the world, it is your life, your behavior, your treatment of other human beings and animals is going to be reflected by upsetting feelings and the disturbed mind that's going on. You're going to be reflected, it's going to be reflected in your daily life. So just the way the problem has been, that just the way the people were running with buckets of water on to quench the fire, which they thought was outside, but the fire really was inside Rabia's mind, heart. We are also directing our attention mainly to the world, to the outside material world, thinking that by winning the matter, we're going to be able to have a satisfaction within. So our efforts are directed in the wrong direction. And that's why we have the invention of the science all was attributed to with the thought and the idea that winning the nature, winning the matter is going to bring us the pleasure, it's going to bring us the satisfaction. And it cannot be farther from the truth. So the fact that as the science has advanced in the direction of the materialism so much, at the same time we have not made any progress in the spiritual sense, and our minds, our inside psyche has been remaining disturbed all the time. So if we are handling, the science has given more and more power to us, we have achieved more and more achievements outside, but our minds have been always disturbed. And if you give too much material power to somebody with a disturbed mind, the results can be very fatal. And it has happened. In last 1 century, last 20th century, we had 2 world wars. Between 2 world wars, 85 million people were killed. The numbers are staggering. And it has all happened because power has gone into the hands of the people whose minds were disturbed to begin with. 6 million Jews died at the hand of a single-handed guy, Hitler, whose mind was disturbed. So achieving at the material level is very important, there is no question about it, but at the same time, it has to stay at the pace with the spiritual development and simultaneously. So you cannot have one without the other. At the same time, to have a spiritual advancement and have no material progress also is not going to work either. And that's what has happened in the Eastern countries, where we have paid too much attention to the soul, spirituality, but not enough importance to the outside happiness, and that's where the countries become poor and they remain at the very primitive state. So science has gone really to the top and keeps on rising, but the fire which is within us still keeps on burning. In fact, keeps on going, and it's getting worse and worse day by day. So part of the reason is that our ideas were focused mainly to the outside, thinking that fixing the outside will somehow fix the inside, but it has not happened. So inside state of mind is very important and becomes more and more important as you go higher in the society and your actions can affect the millions of lives around it, like a president or a senators and things like that, or somebody who is in charge of nuclear missiles and whatever. The state of those people's minds is extremely important to have the stability, because otherwise innocent people can be affected. So after killing 85 million people in 2 world wars, somebody asked Einstein that, what do you think about the Third World War? When do you think it's going to happen, and what will be the outcome? And he says, so Einstein said, I have not thought much about the Third World War, but I know so much about the Fourth World War. He says, how come? He says, how come you don't know much about Third World War, but you can tell about the Fourth World War? He says, I can tell for sure, because the Fourth World War will not happen, because in the Third World War, the humankind would not survive. The amount of destruction that will be there will be astronomical, that if at all somebody survives, then maybe Fourth World War will be fought, but only with the sticks and the stones. The civilizations will be destroyed.
Yeah.
So that's how much we have reached to the brink of total extinction among us. All this hatred and all this greed and the power, all these things have multiplied so much that in old days, like thousands of years ago, the tribes would fight, maybe 4 or 5 or 10 people will die, and then the war will be called at an end, and the decisions would be reached. But now the same mentality has gone through evolution of more and more hatred, but now we have gadgets, we have scientific, war instruments and war tools and all the weapons of mass destruction, all these things. It's almost like if a crow wants to sing, and who wants to listen to a crow? But give him a loudspeaker or a microphone, and now the whole world can hear the crow. So that's what has happened. Wrong peoples have been getting the wrong achievements at the science level, and that has unfortunately has created a lot of devastations for a lot of people. So it is very important to synchronize the scientific achievements with the spiritual achievements also. In fact, both the things are important. The power in the hands of immature people can be very dangerous. There is events noted in the life of Nadir Shah. Nadir Shah was a Muslim invader who came to India, and his empire stretched all the way from Middle East to the Afghanistan, part of China, and then he came all the way to Delhi. Before him, the Muslim Mughal Empire was ruling India for like 400 years. And little by little, it had started crumbling, and Maratha Empire from the southwest was encroaching, giving them hard times and things like that. So he saw that as an opportunity, and he attacked India. And he was so ruthless that he had a very devious techniques to harass people, and mass murdering and all those things were so important for him to create the panic and fear among the people. One of the technique was to surround the whole town with the soldiers all around, and then set the town by the fire. He would not let anybody escape. When he invaded a Mughal emperor, he came to Delhi. Muhammad Shah was in charge, and first Muhammad Shah did not want to budge. So finally he had to give in because his forces were so powerful, Nadir Shah's. So, but he still did not want to concede his emperorship. So his men, Nadir Shah's men, created a massacre on a day of March 22nd. 30,000 Indians were killed in Delhi in one day.
30,000?
30,000 people.
Wow.
And that brought Muhammad Shah to his knees. He says, please stop this carnage. This is how much ruthless this guy was. And he had so much power. Imagine all this destruction because of a disturbed and dirty mind, basically.
Yeah.
So he had asked one of the astrologer once that, what do you think, what is your advice? Should a man live long and try to live long, or should just live an average life, say 70 years or something like that? And also tell me, is sleeping too much good for you, or I should sleep only little, or I should sleep more? What are your thoughts? I heard you are a wise man. So the astrologer must be a really wise man. He says, it all depends whom I give the advice. To the man like you, and if a man like you wants to live long, I would say don't do it. In fact, the people like you should not be born in the first place. And if you are born, you should die immediately. He had guts. He did, yeah. And you should die immediately. And if you do escape, and supposing you do live longer, you should sleep 24 hours a day and drink yourself to death.
Right.
He says the carnage that you have afflicted on millions of people, millions of people's life can be saved from one person like you who have an evil and a devious mind. So this is what he told Nadir Shah.
Wow.
And Nadir Shah could not get over it. He did not kill him somehow. That he says that I can understand that guy. Why would he be so insulting to me? So the question is,